Hi, welcome to another episode of Mr. Marty. So today I wanted to do an episode called Meet Mr. Marty. So I got this idea. I was reading some books on infant toddler care and going on websites and this idea of that many people in child care have advocated, where you do these infant teacher, toddler teacher, teacher biographies, where you basically, as you're working in a center, you kind of do these more detailed biographies, letting the giving a information like in a handout sheet to the parents of the children, so they could get to know you a little bit better. And that's kind of my goal with all of these videos, is to let everyone know me a little bit better. Fellow teachers, the director, parents, anyone watching these videos, or anyone having an interest in really excellent infant toddler care. So I wanted to talk to you today about my past. I've kind of, every now and then, I've kind of little bits of Mr. Marty, and that'll come through in other videos too. But kind of wanted to give my little bio. Who is Mr. Marty, and where does he come from, and how are his views kind of formed, and what are his hobbies, and who is he? Who am I? Who is Mr. Marty? So I was born in Phoenix, Arizona. I grew up in Phoenix in the 1960s. I was one of 4 children. We tended to have large families back then. Pretty much everybody. You didn't know anyone who was just a single and only child, or maybe 1 or 2 siblings. Pretty much everybody had 4, 5, 6 kids, and that was the norm. We were not LDS. It was just the norm of the time, and so I came from a fairly large family, 4 people, and it was 3 boys and a girl, Jennifer. I was the oldest, and then I talked about my mom had done in-home daycare and stuff when I was growing up. So the public schools I went to in Arizona made quite an impression on me. Not all of it good. In the 1960s, in Phoenix, Arizona, public school teachers used paddles. They used, I remember one teacher brought a hickory switch, but they kind of nixed that because, we're in, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, and the hickory switch is actually making us bleed when they whip us with it. But so paddling was pretty much the norm. We were paddled all the time by teachers for whatever infractions, and sometimes seriously. A friend of mine, Pat, we were in 7th grade, and the teacher was a wood shop teacher who had made the paddle himself. Actually broke that paddle on Pat's backside and kind of injured Pat. But all of this was the norm when I was growing up, and I was revolted by it. I mean, I was a kid going, dude, why are you beating us? You're supposed to be my teacher. You're supposed to be loving us. And it was the times. It was the times of Phoenix. It was the mentality, and it was where I came from. And so when I hear people, especially my age, talk about the good old days, they need to start whooping kids again and getting them. And I'm like, dude, I didn't like being whipped in school. I didn't like the fact that my teachers were using corporal punishment. Why are you advocating this? I didn't think it was a good thing then, and I definitely don't think it's a good thing now. Children should never ever be hit or struck or anything. And by the way, since we're on the subject of corporal punishment, hickory switches, paddles, and belts are actually lethal weapons. And I think it's interesting that, in half of the states in this country, most of the southern states, Texas, Georgia, Louisiana, Florida, West Virginia, all of this is legal to paddle kids, and they paddle kids on a regular basis, and then parents use belts and hickory switches. And it's wrong. It's wrong. They did it to me when I was a kid, myself and my peer group, and it's wrong. So I kind of came out of that culture, that school system. It was the culture that I came from, working class. We were all working class. We were not upper class. So Mr. Marty comes from a working class background. So I kind of have working class sensibilities. Got married when I was young, had 2 children. I won't mention their names. their privacy. They would prefer that I not mention their names. A boy and a girl, and had a 13-year marriage. Unfortunately, it did not last, and like many people, Mr. Marty ended up getting divorced. In 1984, the same year that my daughter was born, in fact, within 2 weeks of my daughter being born, my brother, Chris, was killed in a horrible car accident. And our family never really kind of got past that. Chris was in ICU for about 2 weeks, and there was discussion as to whether or not to write a no code, whether or not to resuscitate him if he stopped breathing, and it kind of tore our family apart. My mom, my grandmother, they were kind of on one side. I was on another. My sister was kind of caught in the middle. She was really young. She didn't really kind of grasp what was going on. And in the end, Chris succumbed to his injuries and passed away. And we never, as a family, 1984 was a turning point for us with the death of Chris. He was 19, had everything to look forward to, and this car plowed into him, and he was fatally injured. So went through that, entered college, was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I didn't do well in high school. I was more into goofing off. I was more into hanging out with my friends. I did not take school very seriously, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. I was a misbehaving kid. That's why the whole paddle thing came in. I was paddled a lot. Now, my misbehaving does not justify them paddling me. Let me be clear about that. But I was a chronic misbehavior, and so were my friends. I tended to hang out with other misbehaviors, and we were all kind of paddled together. And but I didn't do well academically in school. But I always felt that I could kind of handle college. So I got into a community college. Columbus State Community College in Columbus, Ohio, that was 1992, and went there from 92 to 93. I think I took a couple of child development courses. I had to go back and look at my transcript, but mostly I took humanities, political science, history, sociology, philosophy, English literature. And then I transferred to Ohio University, and that was one of the greatest experiences of my life. I didn't even think I could hack Ohio University, but my GPA at the community college was 3.7, and I was actually able to manage a 3 it slipped a little, kind of a 3.6, I think I went down, but I had to work extra harder at Ohio University, but that was okay. A challenge always makes you rise to it and kind of overcome that. And I love college. I was a history major, but I took a ton of sociology, political science. Again, going back to humanities, the human condition has always interested me, and so I got into Shakespeare, loved Shakespeare, got into theater. At one point, I wanted to do playwriting. I love the idea of, I'm a writer, I'm kind of an amateur writer, and I love the idea of putting words in someone else's mouth. I love the idea of a playwright or a screenwriter where you're writing dialogue and then actors on a stage or in a film are actually speaking that dialogue that you created, that you thought about, and I really like that. And so I attended a lot of theater. I went through this phase where I just went through a lot of theater. So I love theater. I love Star Trek. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. Any kind of sci-fi, Babylon 5, Star Trek. Some of my favorite movies are Solaris, The English Patient, Dr. Zhivago, The Emperor's Club, Dead Poets Society, films like this that really make you think. And I actually got into the poetry of Dylan Thomas through the movie Solaris, which starred George Clooney, which, by the way, was a remake of a Russian film based on a Russian novel called Solaris. And I like both. I like the original Russian film, and then the remake, the American version with George Clooney. But in that film, George Clooney and the actress Natasha, I can't think of her last name, they talk about Dylan Thomas and his poetry, and I went out and I got into it, and I love the poetry of Dylan Thomas. I love poetry in general. And going back to Shakespeare, it's one of the reasons I love Shakespeare. I think no matter what Shakespeare said, that he on what topic Shakespeare pretty much said it better than anybody on whatever topic that is. And so things that concern the human condition have always concerned me, and these existential questions. Who are we, and why are we here? And I'll be honest with you folks, I haven't figured any of this stuff out. I do have some religious views. I do have some views, and that's probably for another video. Maybe not, and maybe kind of controversial or whatever. But I do believe, and I am a believer, and we can get more into that at some point. But we're all engaged in something here on this earth. We're born. We come out of our mother's wombs, and again, going back to the infant toddler room, we're infants, toddlers, when we start advancing and growing, and we become adults, and we look around. Those of us who think, those of us who are self-aware and cognizant. Rene Descartes famously said in Latin, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. He went through a wide variety of experiments, thought experiments of, who am I? How do I know what is real? How can I put my hands around this objective reality? And then he finally came up with cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. And so this has always interested me. And so basically, that's kind of direction I went. Music, I love music. I love art, music, art, anything along those lines. And music, when we talk about music, you talk about eclectic. I love everything from the stuff I was raised with, Charlie Daniels, Kiss, Judas Priest, all that old 70s stuff, the 60s, Rolling Stones. I like that. I like opera. I like classical music. Some of my favorite opera composers actually Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky wrote a lot of operas, and people don't realize that. And I tell people, you like Swan Lake, you like the Nutcracker Ballet. That's what Tchaikovsky's operas are like. They're like Swan Lake and the Nutcracker, only with words, singing in Russian, just beautiful soprano and tenor voices in his operas. And so I like opera. I like classical. Bach is one of my all-time favorite composers. But I also like Shostakovich, a Russian composer of the 20th century that had a little bit of issues with Joseph Stalin. We're lucky that Joseph Stalin did not kind of nix Shostakovich. But and then I love modern stuff. People ask me, what's your favorite rock band? People my age ask me that, and they think I'm going to say, something like Styx or some 70s band. And I say the Veer Union. Well, who's the Veer Union? Well, it's a bunch of young guys out of Vancouver, Canada, and the lead singer is this African-American guy with a big mohawk, and he's got these big hoop earrings, and it's this hard, heavy metal, kind of thrash metal stuff, and I love that. So I'm very eclectic when it comes to music and art and a lot of topics. So what I don't like, let's see, I don't like sports. Mr. Marty just never really developed an interest in sports. And again, I guess I kind of go for more of the feminine kind of thinking stuff. I guess I'm wearing my Mr. Marty pink shirt. And I just kind of go for that. And that's just kind of how I've been. Stuff that intrigues me, stuff that where we're wrestling with these questions. And so we've run out of time, and I wanted to keep this video under 15 minutes, and I want to just give you a little bit of Meet Mr. Marty. This is a little bit of my life and where I come from and who I am. This is because all of our experiences kind of shape us. So all of that, my public schools, my everything kind of shapes who I are. So it shapes who I am. And so, excuse me. That coffee keeps coming up. Mr. Marty keeps having coffee every morning, as you can see, and I think I'm going to have to give up the coffee because I keep doing these videos and the coffee keeps wanting to come back up. So I apologize for that. Excuse me and my little kind of coffee coming up there. So go out and make this an awesome day. Make this a positive day. Be the change that you want to see in other people. I was paddled as a kid. That's wrong. It's wrong to paddle kids. don't paddle kids. So, anyways, that's just another episode of Mr. Marty. So, you guys have an awesome day, and do something positive out there. Mr. Marty, until next time, thank you so much. Bye.